Imagine waking up to the roar of a dump truck vomiting 3 tons of jagged gravel right onto your driveway, sealing you in like a prisoner in your own home. The driver, a grizzled guy with a smirk that said he'd seen worse, didn't even bother apologizing. Just tossed his half-smoked cig into your prized rose bushes and peeled out, leaving a dust cloud that choked the morning air. And there, strutting up like she'd orchestrated the apocalypse herself, was Evelyn Hargrove, the HOA president, her pearl necklace glinting under the sun as she waved her clipboard like a victory flag, chirping, "Just enforcing the covenants. Dear, nothing personal." In the sleepy suburb of Willow Creek Estates, where every lawn was manicured to within an inch of its life and mailboxes had to match the approved Pantone shade of beige. Alex Rivera had always played by the rules, or at least, that's what everyone thought. I'd moved here 5 years ago after a messy divorce, seeking the kind of quiet American dream where neighbors waved politely and nobody asked too many questions. But whispers followed me like shadows. "Did you hear about Alex?" "Yeah. The one who allegedly skimmed from his old job. Shady. Right? It was all bullshit. Started by some nosy coworker back in the city who'd twisted a simple accounting error into a scandal." I never fought back publicly. Why bother? People love their gossip, and correcting them just fans the flames. Instead, I observed, noted the petty alliances, the way folks like Evelyn wielded their little fiefdoms to mask their own insecurities. Evelyn, with her perfectly coiffed bob and her endless stream of community newsletters that were really just veiled threats, ruled the HOA like a benevolent dictator, emphasis on the dictator part. She preached about upholding property values and fostering harmony, but her real game was control. One wrong-colored shutter, and you'd get a fine wrapped in a smiley face sticker. Started small, as these things do. A couple of weeks before the gravel apocalypse, Evelyn had sent me a violation notice for my front yard. I'd put up a couple of quirky garden gnomes, one with a fishing rod, the other tipping its hat in a cheeky salute. Harmless, right? But no. According to her, they disrupted the aesthetic uniformity of the block. "We aim for timeless elegance. Alex," her note read, signed with a flourish that screamed passive aggression. "Perhaps consider neutral topiaries instead?" I chuckled at first, stashing the notice in a drawer. But then came the follow-up, a $200 fine, delivered with a plate of her infamous lemon bars that tasted like they'd been baked with spite instead of sugar. I ate one anyway, grimacing through the tartness, thinking, if this is her weapon, she's already lost. But Evelyn wasn't done. She started the rumor mill churning harder. Poor Alex. Can't even follow simple rules. Must be that shady past catching up. Neighbors avoided eye contact at the mailbox, and my invitations to block barbecues dried up. I stayed silent, watching her parade around like the queen of conformity, her yoga pants swishing as she inspected fences and flower beds. That morning the gravel hit. I was sipping black coffee on the porch when the truck arrived. The rumble shook the windows, and by the time I stepped out, my driveway was a fortress of rocks, blocking my car completely. No way in or out. Evelyn approached with that HOA strut, chin up, lips pursed in faux sympathy. Morning, Alex. This is per Section 12C. Failure to comply with aesthetic guidelines results in mandatory landscaping correction. The board voted unanimously. It's for the greater good. Her voice dripped with that saccharine tone, like she was doing me a favor by burying my life in pebbles. I just nodded, calm as a statue. Unanimously. Huh? Must have been a tough debate. She blinked, caught off guard by my lack of outrage. then recovered with a tight smile. Well, harmony requires sacrifice. You'll thank us when property values soar. As she sauntered away, clipboard tucked under her arm, I felt the first stir of something cold and calculated. This wasn't just petty. It was a declaration of war, disguised as bureaucracy. Inside, I paced the kitchen, the gravel pile mocking me through the window like a bad joke that wouldn't end. My ex-wife called, worried after hearing the rumors. Evelyn's network extended to social media, where she'd posted a veiled update about maintaining standards despite challenges. "Alex, fight this," she urged. But I hung up, brewing another pot of coffee. No, rushing in would play into her hands. Evelyn thrived on drama. She'd twist any outburst into proof of my instability. Instead, I sat on the porch swing, staring at the mound, noting how the mail carrier skipped my box, how the garbage truck honked and drove on. My groceries rotted in the trunk, undeliverable. Even my freelance work suffered. No driving to client meetings meant canceled gigs. Neighbors peeked from curtains, whispering, but nobody offered help. That night, as the sun dipped and the gravel cast long shadows, I muttered to myself, "Harmony, my ass. This is extortion in khakis." The next day, Evelyn doubled down. She organized a neighborhood watch walk right past my house, a gaggle of her loyalists trailing behind like ducklings. "See, everyone, this is what happens when we let standards slip," she announced loudly, pointing at the pile as if it were Exhibit A in a trial. One of her cronies, Bob from down the street, chuckled nervously. "Yeah, Evelyn, you're keeping us all in line." I watched from the window, unseen, jotting notes on my phone, times, names, her exact words. When she knocked on my door later, handing over another fine for obstructing public access, ironically, her own doing, I accepted it with a polite "Thank you, Evelyn. Appreciate the clarity." Her eyes narrowed, sensing something off in my calm, but she plastered on that smile. "Just doing my duty. Community first. Always." As she left, I thought, duty? More like delusion. By evening, the isolation hit harder. My daughter, Mia, who lived with her mom but visited weekends, texted, "Dad, can't come over. Driveway's blocked? WTF." I replied with a thumbs-up emoji, downplaying it, but inside, the anger simmered. That's when I started planning. Not with shouts or lawyers, not yet. I dug out old HOA documents from the attic, yellowed pages from when the neighborhood was founded. Turns out, Evelyn had been bending rules for years. Selective enforcement, like ignoring her own overgrown hedges while fining others. I cross-referenced with public records online, finding discrepancies in the HOA budget, funds for community events that never happened. But I kept it quiet, building my dossier like a detective in a bad noir film. Word spread subtly. Hank, the conspiracy nut next door who'd once ranted about chemtrails, sidled up to my fence one afternoon. "Evelyn's gone too far. Man, that gravel? It's a message." I nodded, testing the waters. "Yeah, but what can one guy do?" He leaned in, whispering, "Count me in if you're plotting." "I got tools. Soon, Mrs. Patel from across the way stopped by with tea, confessing how Evelyn had fined her for exotic spices smelling up the block. "It's racism wrapped in regulations," she said bitterly. I listened, offering nothing but empathy, but inside, Alliances formed. Evelyn, sensing the shift, amped up her patrols, her clipboard scribbles turning into daily violation slips shoved under doors. Unapproved bird feeders attract vermin. One read for a neighbor's harmless setup. Her excuses grew lamer, her tone sharper, like a machine glitching under pressure. I tested the waters with a small act of defiance. One night, under cover of darkness, I rearranged a few rocks from the pile into a smiley face, pointing right at Evelyn's house. The next morning, she stormed over, red-faced. "This is vandalism. Alex, Section 8D prohibits unauthorized alterations." I feigned innocence from my porch. "Alterations? Looks like nature's art to me." "Wind must have done it," she huffed, scribbling furiously. "Don't play games. The board will hear about this." As she marched off, I sipped my coffee, the first real smile cracking my face in days. The rumors flipped. Now I was the quiet rebel, and Evelyn the overzealous tyrant. Her power, built on fear, started cracking. That's when the real escalation began. I gathered my unlikely crew in the basement. Hank with his wild eyes, Mrs. Patel with her sharp wit, and young Tim, the tech-savvy kid from down the block who'd been fined for drone flying. We called it Operation Pebble Pushback. "Evelyn thinks she's untouchable," I said, spreading out maps of the neighborhood. "But every empire has weak spots." Hank grinned. "Like her precious Lexus, parked at every meeting like a throne." Mrs. Patel nodded. "And her emergency funds, I've seen the receipts. Half went to her spa days." Tim piped up, "I can hack the HOA email list. Send anonymous tips." I held up a hand. "No hacks, legal only. But videos? Absolutely." We brainstormed over pizza, laughter mixing with strategy, the room buzzing with that forbidden energy of the oppressed rising. Evelyn struck next with drones, literal buzzing spies hovering over yards, capturing evidence of infractions. One buzzed my roof at dawn, whirring like an accusation. "Invasion of privacy," Hank yelled from his yard. Evelyn's response in the newsletter, "For safety and compliance. Dear residents. Nothing to hide. Nothing to fear. Bullshit." Tim jury-rigged a jammer from old radio parts, and we downed one mid-flight. Crashed into my bushes with a pathetic thud. We buried it ceremoniously, marker reading, R.I.P. Big Brother's eye. Evelyn's face when she saw the photo circulating online? Priceless, twisted in outrage, her harmonious mask slipping. But she wasn't done. A lawsuit landed in my mailbox. Vandalism, for the smiley face. Defamation, from the whispers she started herself. And intentional infliction of aesthetic distress. I almost laughed at that last one. Aesthetic distress? That's rich coming from someone whose house looks like a rejected IKEA catalog. I showed it to the group. Mrs. Patel's eyes lit. This is her desperation. Let's counter with facts. We pored over records, uncovering embezzlement. $5,000 for a fountain. That was just her backyard koi pond. Tim built a website, willowcreekexposed.com. Anonymous but damning scans of receipts, timelines of fines, even a meme generator turning Evelyn's clipboard poses into Karen of the day. The neighborhood stirred. Folks who'd cowered started sharing stories. Fines for kids' chalk drawings, threats over holiday lights. Evelyn panicked, her newsletters turning shrill. Sedition will not be tolerated. Unity above all. She installed spotlights on her house. beaming like searchlights in a prison yard. Anonymous letters arrived, cease or face expulsion, but it backfired. More allies joined, whispering, "We're with you, Alex." Then the bombshell. Tim dug up city records. The gravel delivery, a mix-up. Meant for lot 27, a public path repair. Ours was 26. A typo, 1 digit off, and Evelyn had pounced without checking. So her enforcement was based on a clerical screw-up? Hank howled. I laughed till my sides hurt. The great Evelyn Hargrove, felled by bad penmanship, but she didn't back down. She petitioned to remove my veteran memorial plaque. I served in the reserves, claiming it exceeded display limits. That hit deep. The plaque honored my dad. Gone too soon. I stood by it that night, hand on the cool metal, resolve hardening. Tim filmed a simple video. Me polishing the plaque at dawn. Voiceover. They fine you for living, but strip your memories? That's not community, that's control. It exploded online. Veterans groups piling on. Evelyn's inbox flooded. She doubled down in a frantic email. Patriotism must conform to guidelines. The neighborhood boiled over. Secret meetings sprouted in backyards. Petitions circulated. All we need is sunlight on her shadows, I told the growing crowd at Mrs. Patel's lemonade gathering. The climax hit at the quarterly HOA meeting in the rec center. Evelyn banged her gavel, voice quivering. Order. We've endured sabotage from malcontents. Slander. Drones downed. Websites of lies. I stood, calm as ever. Malcontents? Or neighbors tired of your throne? I held up the original charter. Per Article 5, a leadership review requires 15% signatures. I've got 68. The room gasped. She sputtered. Invalid. Forged. But board member Quiet Lisa rose. I second. Tim projected the evidence. Embezzled funds. Fake projects. Her emails calling us visual pollutants. Evelyn flailed. This is for your own good, without rules. Chaos. But the vote crashed over her. 72 to oust. 8 against. She slumped, silent, her empire crumbling as cheers erupted. Not vengeful, but liberated. Mrs. Patel took interim chair, vowing openness. The city apologized for the gravel, offering removal. I refused. It's a monument now. We transformed it. Flowers blooming amid rocks. A sign, Gravel Gate, where tyranny tripped. Willow Creek bloomed. Colorful yards. Kids' laughter. Real community events. Mia's school project on it won awards. She captioned a photo of Evelyn's gravel-dumped car, Karma's Crunchy. A year later, at the anniversary bash, I addressed the crowd from atop the mound. This started as a mistake, but we turned it into a mirror, showing what happens when power forgets people. Laughter rang. Toasts clinked. Freedom palpable. So, was I right to play the long game? Or should I have rolled over for harmony? Tell me. In a world of HOA Karens, is rebellion the real rule breaker, or the only savior?